Hello, and thanks for coming along to And We Have an Office Dog, the digital agency podcast where we talk to agency owner-directors and learn more about what makes them tick. From the things that make them similar to the things they'd rather have known sooner, where they've had success and where they've learned some hard lessons. All will be revealed with your host, Chris Simmons, the Agency Accelerator, and he'll be talking to a different awesome agency person in each episode, asking them 4 questions and seeing where the conversation takes us over the next 25 minutes. Okay, so let us begin. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, voiceover guy, and I'm really pleased to have Rob Twells back from the Digital Maze. How you doing, mate? Good to see you again.
I'm very well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I'm all right. It's very rare that I get questions asked of me in a podcast. That was within the first 1 minute. Bloody hell! Look at that, guys. Tables have turned. So, how's things been generally in the last year? What you thinking in terms of agency land? Are we on a positive end of the scale? What are we looking at? Do you think?
Yeah, it's been okay. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say it's been anything to write home about because it hasn't. But we're on an upward trajectory, very, very slightly. It's challenging though. I think, I speak to a lot of agency owners or leaders and whatnot, and you do hear the same sorts of things. Things like sales are a lot more difficult to come by. Staff retention and talent and stuff is a lot more difficult to come by, and it seems to have been probably since COVID. The last 2-3 years, really, it feels like it's more difficult to grow. Doesn't mean that growth's not possible, but it's just more difficult.
So, for those really rude people who didn't listen to your very good season 1 episode, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are, what you do, and what the agency you run does? Or
Sure. So I'm Rob, Managing Director of the Digital Maze. We are actually the amalgamation of particularly 2 different agencies by the way of a merger. So an agency called Frogspark, which actually I founded back in 2012, which was a web design and development agency primarily, and then Boom Online, which is performance marketing. Merge them together. Those brands still exist, but actually we've now created what we're trying to be sort of more of a powerhouse agency in the Digital Maze. So yeah, that's us with full service, 3 core services: web design and development, particularly e-commerce, SEO, and paid advertising.
And we talked a little bit about the merger and how it all happened in season 1, but was that for the benefit of everyone, listening for the first time to your story? How did you both kind of come about this makes sense to do kind of perspective? Because I know lots of agencies at the minute are kind of looking at long-term options and how to be resilient in the face of current challenges and things like that. How did things come up for you guys?
I think we were probably at a bit of a crossroads in the agency of do we put our foot down and really go for this ourselves, me and my business partner, that is, or do we look for other opportunities whereby we can almost fast forward the growth, so to speak, and that's what we decided to do. Both me and my business partner had just started a family, so it felt like fast forwarding it was quite attractive to us because nobody wants to aggressively grow a business with all the sleepless nights you get with kids and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we did. We sort of we fast forwarded it by merging the agencies together, doubled the team overnight. Well, more than doubled the team overnight, doubled the revenue overnight, of course, as well. And all of a sudden, we went gone from a sort of 15-person agency to a 30, and then what we are now, which is sort of 35-person agency, which poses different challenges to what it did when it was.
Yeah, it's a different set of rules in many senses, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, in the last year or so, since we've spoken, a lot of the merger piece has kind of bedded in quite nicely, I suspect. What are you seeing in terms of major trends and developments in the agency space over the last year or so?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit and talk about AI and stuff like that.
Please don't.
I think people have spoke about that to death, but I don't know if that has an impact on what I'm going to talk about next. But I think agency business development and sales is something that I'm heavily involved in anyway. So whilst I'm the managing director, I would say day to day, a lot of my time is spent on the front end, talking to potential new customers,
Hmm.
being part of the pitch team, onboarding new customers, and so on. And the process has changed a massive amount, in my opinion, over the last sort of two or 3 years, particularly.
Hmm.
Not only what feels like there's an expectation to do more in the pitch process, so almost provide the work up front in some cases. Can we see
Wow.
a design?
Okay.
Can we have the strategy now? And all that kind of stuff. So more commitment from us up front in terms of time, energy, and obviously cost that goes along with that. But then it just feels like there's not a lot of commitment after that process.
Yeah.
I'm not talking all of our prospects. 75% of them are fantastic. It's there's a lot of respect for what we do and how much time and effort we put into the process. But there's definitely a bigger piece of the pie now that quite happily just ghost you after a pitch. Quite happily string you along for 6 months and say, "Oh, yeah, we're still thinking about it," or the MD's not sure. And from a forecasting point of view, it's just a pain. You got
Yeah.
deals in your new revenue forecast that have been there for 6 months, and the probability is going up and down based on the last email you got, and you don't know if to think about it from a resourcing point of view or not. I would say that's been the biggest challenge, to be honest, over the last 12 months.
What do you think's driving that? And it not just necessarily I know the lag and the difficulty getting that final signature, so we say, and kicking off. But is there something that you've noticed as a trend in general that's making it easier for people to be, let's say, unprofessional and ghost or string you along, or want the free work and things like that? What's changed there, do you think?
I don't know. If I'm being honest, I have no idea. I think obviously, you can talk about economics, you can talk about cost of living crisis, you can talk about things like that. And
Mm.
if agents are finding it more challenging to grow, then there's a good chance that a lot of other businesses are finding it more challenging to grow, and
Yeah, yeah.
therefore, you know, marketing is a considerable investment. So, they're thinking much harder about it. What a lot of the things we're seeing at the moment is 2 or 3 years ago, someone would sign up to a retainer, no problem. 12 months,
Yeah.
no issue at all. But now it's like, oh, we'll start, first month we'll do an audit, and then we'll see about it in the second month. And you almost account manage them to the point where you've got a customer on a retainer, which is fine. But in terms of what's driving it, not entirely sure. I think there's a lot of I think right at the top of businesses, so sort of C-suite level, director level, I think just the appetite to invest is not there quite as much as it used to. I don't think there's as much free capital or free-flowing capital knocking about like there used to be potentially.
Yeah.
But I am optimistic about this year. I think everyone knows about the issues economically in 2022 and 2023. And I'm reading a lot of optimistic articles about marketing budgets increasing in 2024 and all this kind of stuff. And I am optimistic about it.
Yeah, I think the types of businesses which will see and feel that sort of positivity that you're talking about are the ones that are smart enough to know that marketing is essential. The ones that are more kind of like, well, let's stop marketing so we can save some cash because times are tough.
Mm.
They're probably not going to be ones that can afford you in a few years' time anyway, because
No,
maybe they won't be
exactly.
around. I can't remember. If I get this wrong, I'm going to get slated. But I think it was Henry Ford. He said something along the lines of, "Stopping marketing to save cost is like stopping a watch to save time."
Yeah.
You can't if you switch off the marketing, you don't get the cash flow that you need to manage everything else. So it's not really a cost to the business; it's an investment. And I think that you probably find that I'd imagine that if you were to do a bit of a forensic deep dive into the clients that are signing and that are agreeing and aren't being harder to get across the line, I'd imagine that there's probably a trend where those people actually understand marketing and they've been given marketing budgets
100%.
versus, oh, we need to do it, but we're not sure when.
There's definitely a culture of marketing within businesses that we've seen the success from.
Mm.
Whilst I've been quite negative on the sales front, we've still got, a decent, 50%, around 50% strike rate, which obviously is pretty good for a pitch process and stuff like that.
Mm.
I think what frustrates me is more just the time and energy that goes into it. Because I know that, there's put a lot on the teams sometimes to say we need to get this pitch deck together. It's it's going to be a great opportunity. You're trying to motivate people. You've got a great new prospect, and it's very deflating if it doesn't come to fruition. Isn't it? So managing
It's
that
tough.
intensity.
other than that, in terms of the agency itself, what have you seen going on in the industry, as it were? Speaking to other agency leaders, are you spotting any trends amongst them beyond getting that signing on the dotted line?
Um, Speaking to other agency owners, I think, and something I've certainly seen is with the clients that do choose to come on board, and we have a great working relationship with. There's lots of emphasis on, and as there should be, don't get it wrong. There's lots of emphasis on driving the conversion, driving the revenue, and
Yeah.
that's fantastic. But for me, there's always a place for that sort of top of funnel creativity stuff that doesn't directly drive revenue, but it does play part in the entire marketing funnel.
Yeah.
People are a lot less interested in that these days, which does mean that there's probably less opportunity for our team to work on some of the more creative stuff, some of the more sort of awareness building stuff. And it's all very focused on how we're going to get pounds in our customers' back pocket as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And again, it's all driven by the same thing. People are finding it more challenging to grow. Therefore, there's more pressure on marketing functions to develop the opportunity, so on and so forth. So I'd say that's something that we've seen. There's definitely a lot more emphasis on bottom of the funnel conversion rather than the more creative awareness building activity, which, I'm a creative. I like doing that kind of stuff, but I'm also aware that it takes longer to see the return from that kind of stuff. But I do think it's essential.
It's true. It is absolutely true. The fun stuff is usually the higher priced stuff, and it often ends up taking longer to see the return. So you can kind of understand it, but it's, you get the 1 in 10 that's fun. It should keep you going.
Yeah.
Hey, voiceover guy here. Me again. Minty Digital increased its net profits by 54% within 6 months with the OMG Accelerator program. Check out omg.center/info. Sorry, Chris. Keep going.
Great facts. Rude to interrupt us. Thanks very, very much, voiceover guy. So, from your point of view as a leader, how do you think? What have you learned and adapted to this year? What sort of personal or professional growth have you seen for yourself?
Personal and professional growth. So, I think something I've always found challenging is sort of delegation and sort of keeping out of the way, so to speak. I've got a great network of people as part of the sort of merger and acquisition we went through. We have got a really quite good sort of non-executive team as well. So I get a lot of mentoring from those guys as well, which has been useful for me because I've personally never really had a job. Kind of started the agency from university and. You learn the ropes and make a lot of mistakes, and you kind of look back now and cringe at some of the stuff you used to do and say. But I definitely think getting out of the way, and this is very cliche, but getting out of the way, delegating, and really focusing on where my strength lies. And I think as an agency leader in any capacity, I think certainly up until a revenue of maybe 2, 3, 4 million, I do really have a belief that person should be right at the front end. Talking to potential customers, being, representing the business, that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to focus more of my time and energy on that side of things, driving the business forward, representing the business, being almost a face for the business, rather than at the back end and doing the stuff that really I haven't been on the tools in 10 years now. So I'm no use there anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's changed too much. You may as well stick to your strengths, which are current.
Exactly.
I know from my experience what it felt like to get out of your own way eventually, and the your eyes kind of widen, don't they? You realize what there was to win and how much you could get by potentially doing it sooner. I remember kicking myself and thinking, why didn't I just let these smart people be smart first? Why have I not done this sooner? How do you think your team have sort of noticed that change? Do you think they've reacted well to that kind of thing?
I think so. And don't get me wrong, it's still not perfect. It's still I'm very I'm very committed to the business. I don't like the feeling of not knowing something and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I still have days and weeks where maybe I'm a little bit too involved and stuff like that. But I think generally looking at it holistically and zooming out a bit more, I think definitely step back and focus on where I'm strongest. I think the team overall just feel more empowered. We make better decisions. And actually, it's less about whether we make good or bad decisions. It's about learning from it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very much wired up to think that every decision needs to be correct every single time. But actually, that's no good. It's no good. You have to make a couple of rubbish decisions here and there, really, to learn
Yeah,
from it.
yeah.
So you have to let it be. So that's kind of my promise to myself and to the team that I'm trying to implement, and it's going okay.
And if you're a member of Rob's team listening to this right now and he starts butting in, professionally tell him to butt out. It's for his own good. Okay.
Professional about telling me to butt out either.
Yeah, well, it's all about the delivery of most of these things, isn't it? I think you know where your strengths lie. You know where to put your time. You've got, like you say, you've got a nice non-exec team. You've got mentorship in place and things like that. And I suspect that you're getting the right nudges at the right time when you need
course,
to. And there's no better way of learning than being told something is quite hard way to learn when you're an adult. Being shown something or doing something and learning from it is much nicer, isn't it?
I think I've made myself more accountable as well. Growing the business independently with business partner and best mate for the best part of the first 8 years of the journey, there was, something went wrong. Really, nobody was going to tell me otherwise, or had nobody to be accountable to. There was no board to report into, all that kind of stuff. Whereas now, I'm accountable to the team. I'm accountable to a wider team of leadership that we've got now. We've got directors, we've got leadership, we've got technical directors, we've got operational directors, and I'm accountable to them at the end of the day because we're a more sophisticated business. Whereas, again, roll back 5-6 years, the leadership team was me and my business partner. You learn a lot by having a bigger leadership team around you.
Absolutely. It's like that learning by osmosis sometimes as well, isn't it? You pick up these things, and I never forget. I often sort of punch myself for thinking about it, slap myself for thinking about it. I went into my first ever agency job, and someone said, can't remember, they used an acronym, BAU, and I was like, oh yeah, BAU, and I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And I was on Googling it and thinking, why am I not as smart as these people? And it just turns out that you have to learn some of this stuff. There's no kind of rules of engagement when it comes to these things, and you pick up little bits. And then there's other times where it's probably good to sit in a room with people who know something you don't know, because it's a bit humbling, but also you learn something from it.
100%, and you get a much different perspective on what your perspective is, and I think by knowing less, I think you can offer a better perspective as well. You come in a bit, fresh pair of eyes. If you know too much about something and you get too fixated on what the solution should be, but if you come into it fresh with background information or surface level information, I think me as in a leadership position, I can provide better support to my team as well.
Yeah. It's almost like the kid in the back of the car asking why.
Yeah.
And eventually someone who's answering the question starts to question why themselves, and then maybe something better comes from it. So Rob, 12 months into the future, we're recording another episode of this, but we've got a bottle of champagne in front of us. Bottle of champagne's only going to get opened if you get to where you want to go to in the next 12 months. What's the trajectory? What's the plan? What are we going to pop the champagne over?
Well, there's a few things that I've got my eye on for sure. One of them is obviously revenue based, but I don't particularly want to say that because everyone can say that. For me, one of the things that's really top of mind for me at the minute is our brands. I mentioned we've got FrogSpark, we've got Boom Online, we've got Digital Maze, and the last sort of 3-4 months, we've really gone on a journey of trying to define what the brands are and why they exist. Why should they exist? Because I'm not afraid to say that they got to a point last year where the brands were coexisting, but they were all serving the same purpose to the same people.
Yeah,
we're currently going for a process now of, okay, well, Boom Online. Okay, it's got 10 years of history in it's actually the furniture sector, where a lot of the clients from that business came from. So we're actually in the process now of pivoting that to a specialist marketing agency just for that sector, just for sort of the home retail sector is what we're calling it. And we're doing the same exercise with all of our brands at the moment, really giving them a solid positioning. And I'd like to say in 12 months' time, I'd love to be able to sit here and say, okay, I'm looking at the lead generated for our 3 brands. 90% of the leads generated for Boom are from the home market sector.
Yeah,
90%. That's what I'd love to sit here and do and say, look, we've actually pulled this off. We've created a niche for ourselves. We've created a market for ourselves. We know exactly who we're speaking to. And I think, what am I now? 12 years into this journey. It's taken me 12 years to realise it, but we're here.
So Rob, I'm going to put a bottle in the fridge. I'll put a bottle in the fridge ready for the next recording, if you will.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that's the ticket to growth, isn't it? Really focusing on an area, knowing who you're speaking to,
Yeah, if you're going to be obsessed with anything, be obsessed with something in the future that allow, and then doggedly get to it. After 12 years, the only way forward is to get on with it, and it's not going to come to you.
100%. And we've been all things to all people for the last 12 years as well. And it's got us, we've made great progress with that, don't get me wrong. But I think now's the time for us to really, really pick out the sorts of clients we do our best work for and focus on them, because that only has good news for retention, has good news for new business. It's a good news story all around, isn't it? So
yeah. Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on a second time, Rob. It's been great to catch up, and no doubt we'll speak throughout the year at some point somewhere, hopefully in person. But thanks very much for coming on.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
And in our next episode, we'll revisit another agency leader and see how their last year's been. Thanks very much for listening.